So new all-time highs for Bitcoin, but the question is, when does alt season start and how can you use it to multiply your Bitcoin holdings? In this video, we'll be going over the key indicators you need to keep an eye on and some examples of when a good time to buy an altcoin with Bitcoin is, including a cycle pattern which may well be repeating. So let's get into it. So starting off then with a very quick explanation of what altcoin season is, and it is essentially just the time in the cycle where altcoins outperform Bitcoin. So they go up at a much faster rate than Bitcoin and they are valued higher against Bitcoin in their altcoin BTC pairs, something we'll come on to a little bit later. But this is a little indicator that you can use on blockchaincenter.net. I'm not a big fan of this indicator personally. The reason because I think it's very delayed. So if you remember when we had that mini altcoin season earlier in the year, well, end of last year, start of this year, from about October to about March, altcoins ran really well against Bitcoin. You can see that this indicator didn't actually say it was altcoin season until January, which would have been 3 months too late. You'd have missed a lot of the gains. And then you can see it wasn't even technically alt season in March, even though they did run up until I think it was about mid-March. The altcoins ran, so not the best, but I do like this bit down here where it shows you the performance over the last 90 days, and as you can see, BTC is here, so everything that has outperformed BTC in the last 90 days, that's quite a good tool or indicator to use, because even if you don't think it's quite alt season yet, again, something we'll come on to a little bit later, you can still take note of these coins that have outperformed, because they're probably going to continue to outperform once we see that altcoin season start. And obviously the ones that have performed weaker against BTC are probably going to continue to be weak even when alt season kicks off, compared to the ones that have been strong. So one thing you can do, if you go onto CoinMarketCap, a really useful little tool here is you can change the currency settings in the top right hand corner from USDT to Bitcoin. So if you take a look before I change it, the price of everything is obviously in USD, or if you've changed it to whatever your native currency is, but you can change it, as I say, to Bitcoin, and then you can see that the prices are all in Bitcoin, including the percentage changes as well. So you can take a look at what's performed very well against Bitcoin in the last 7 days, etc. So that's something you can use to keep an eye on. As well, we have this. So again, if you're new, you may not have seen this. If you've been in the crypto space for a while, you probably already know this, but this is just a rough guide / path to how alt season works. So essentially the money flows into Bitcoin first, then it flows into Ethereum, then into large cap altcoins, and then finally into the medium and low caps. Of course, there's some odd things that pop off every now and again as well. So some outperformers, so sometimes like Doge, for example, has done very well over the last couple of days. So it's not strictly Bitcoin runs, then Ethereum runs, then the large caps runs, then the low cap runs. There are obviously some caveats, but that is generally how things go. Now, it might be different in this cycle because we've obviously got the ETF, so a lot of money is going just straight into Bitcoin ETFs as opposed to going into Bitcoin and then that Bitcoin being converted into altcoins. And as well with Ethereum, we've never seen Ethereum perform so poorly against Bitcoin at this stage of the cycle. So might be a little bit different, but that's generally how things start to go. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But enough of that, let's get into the charts and take a look at the key indicators you need to keep an eye on to identify whether we are in alt season or not. Now, just before we jump into the charts, if you wanted more education or to join a community of like-minded traders and investors, then check out our website, learningcrypto.co.uk. We currently have a huge offer on our paid Discord subscriptions to celebrate our 6th year in the industry. So we currently have a free Discord. If you want to jump in and say hello, check out what's in there. With the premium membership, it comes with the daily analysis videos, weekly live streams as well. £10 a month normally, £1 for the first three, or £1 a month for the first 3 months on the current offer. £2 a month for the first 3 months of the Traders Lounge, so you get access to trades, our trading indicator, and also the Traders live stream, which we do every Monday evening. Even bigger saving on annual at the moment, 50% off the premium subscription and 70% off the Traders Lounge annual. So go check it out and look forward to seeing you in there. So then the three main indicators you need to keep an eye on to decide whether we are in alt season or not are the Bitcoin dominance chart, which you see on the screen now, the ETH BTC chart, and the total 3/BTC chart. So If you're not aware, the Bitcoin dominance chart basically shows, as you might expect, the dominance of Bitcoin against the rest of the market. So when Bitcoin dominance is in an uptrend, that means Bitcoin is performing better than altcoins. Now, sometimes altcoins will do very well in USD as Bitcoin's going up, but they're not actually doing as well as Bitcoin. So they're losing Satoshi value. They're losing value in Bitcoin. When Bitcoin dominance is in a downtrend, like when we saw here in the last cycle between January 2021 and May 2021, that is alt season, because altcoins are performing better than Bitcoin. So Bitcoin may still be going up, but altcoins are going up faster and they're growing in Satoshis. They're worth more Bitcoin. So the reason people use alt season to grow their Bitcoin is they put their money into Bitcoin when Bitcoin dominance is low. Then when Bitcoin dominance is high and about to roll over, that's when they put their Bitcoin into altcoins, and then the altcoins outperform Bitcoin when they multiply their Bitcoin. So something to keep an eye on, particularly, as I say, Bitcoin dominance, as we may well be getting close to a top. So as you can see here on the Bitcoin dominance chart, as I've marked out in a previous video, the fall of Bitcoin dominance has occurred after all-time high break. So this was the break of the all-time high back in 2017, and you can see the collapse of Bitcoin dominance that happened there. In 2020, we had one final push in December, and then a little wick in January, and then we started that massive alt season, as I said earlier, from January all the way through till May 2021. Now we have broken all-time highs, as we know, over the past week or so. However, are we still in for one more push on Bitcoin dominance, as there is a pattern in the cycles, which I'll go over a little bit later on, that you need to keep an eye on. So a lot of people think that we may well have hit a peak in Bitcoin dominance. If we just grab the fib, the top of Bitcoin dominance from the last cycle down to the bottom, and you can see that we've tagged that 618 level. So a lot of people think that we may well have topped out. However, there is a good chance, if you take a look at the chart, that we may well push up to about 63-64% to this level here of resistance. Now, it is a Bitcoin dominance chart, so it's an index, not an actual price asset. So support and resistance level should be taken with a pinch of salt. But you can see this level here, 57%, was a huge level of previous support and resistance, even last month or 2 months ago in September and August, where we held it as resistance. Then we had this big impulse last month. So we may well see one more final push up to about 63-64%. If not, if we get a monthly close back below 57%, then that probably signals that we may well have topped out. Now, if we take a look at the other charts, ETH-BTC, this is just quite literally the inverse of, let's go on to the regular chart. This is just the inverse of the Bitcoin dominance chart. So when the ETH-BTC chart is in an uptrend, that normally means that alts are outperforming Bitcoin. When ETH-BTC is in a downtrend, it means that Bitcoin is outperforming altcoins. So you can see that has been the case from September 2022 all the way down to today, and it has just been a horrendous downtrend. As you can see, every time we've hit a support, we've had a very weak bounce, and then we've dropped. Now, if we take a look at this on a monthly, again, take it with a grain of salt. It's not an actual, I suppose technically it is actually a price chart. It is Bitcoin versus Ethereum, or ETH versus Bitcoin. But you can see we came down to this level, which was a solid level of previous resistance here at 0.04. Big resistance in the past. It was support through August and September, and then we crashed through it last month. Have we just had a bearish retest of it so far this month? We've obviously still got a lot of month left. We've still got another 20 days. But this may well just be a bit of a bearish retest, a bit of a trap before one more rollover. And as I say, maybe one more push on the Bitcoin dominance chart as well. The final chart you need to keep an eye on is the total 3 versus BTC. So this is basically all of crypto versus Bitcoin in one chart. And as you can see, we had this massive support level here at 47, held, and then we broke through it with a big red candle last month. So again, are we just going to come up, have a bearish retest of this level before we make another low? The last chart you need to keep an eye on is, of course, the ALT-BTC chart themselves. So whatever altcoin you're considering buying in the BTC pair, you need to keep an eye on that. And that's what we'll go through in a few examples in a little bit. But first, I want to take you through some cycle patterns which have repeated so far and may well repeat, which will be a very important indicator of whether we get an alt season and when it starts. So let's talk about cycle patterns. Now, in the video I made just before the election, I talked about the 4-year cycle. So if you want this explained in more detail, go and check out that video. But essentially the main point of the video was we are now entering into the most bullish phase of the Bitcoin 4-year cycle. So each time we've entered the 3rd year of the Bitcoin cycle, it has been the most bullish. You can see this in 2016 into 2017, we made 2,500% gains on Bitcoin. In the 2020 into 2021 cycle, year 3 started and we went up 389%, and we have now entered into the 3rd year of the Bitcoin cycle for this cycle. So we should have a very good 6 to 9 months ahead of us, potentially topping out, maybe even 12 months, potentially topping out in around October of next year. As well, that I talked about in that video, if we take a look at this Bitcoin chart, is that we have never gone on to retest the lows put in of the election and the past 2 cycles. So back in 2016, we put in a low of $687 for the week. We have never gone back and retested that level. In terms of the 2020 election, the low was 13,207. And again, we never came back to retest that. Even at the lows of the last bear market, we only made it down to 15K. So in terms of the weekly lows that we put in for this election, 66.8K. If the cycle or the pattern repeats, we should not come back and retest that level, which is very bullish indeed. Lastly, going back to the point I made earlier about when the Bitcoin dominance tops out after an all-time high break, if we take a look at when it broke in 2017, so you can see we tested it in March and then fully broke out of the previous all-time high in April. If we go back to the Bitcoin dominance chart, you can see that is when the Bitcoin dominance chart started to collapse around March and April 2017. And then if we take a look at the 2020 break, which is this chart, we broke through on the December of 2020. And if we go back to the Bitcoin dominance chart, that, as I said, we had that run in December, final little wick in January, and then the altcoin season started. So as I say, it's around this time that the Bitcoin dominance chart starts to roll over and altcoins take over. However, there is one more pattern that could be playing out, which could indicate the start of altcoin season, and it's not quite yet. So let's go through some examples of some ALTBTC pairs then. So this is the ADA or Cardano BTC chart, and this might finally make things click for you if you're a little bit confused about the USD pairings and the BTC pairings and the difference between the two. Now, if you've been in ADA from September 2021 up until today, you have lost Bitcoin. You've lost Satoshis because the ADA has performed worse than Bitcoin, apart from a few small bounces that we've had, the biggest one being in November and December of last year. Again, as we said at the beginning of the video, that small alt season that we had at the end of last year, start of this year, but even that was only 2 months for ADA, because even though it was still alt season, January, February and March, you can see that ADA did not perform as well as Bitcoin. And even if you take a look at these 3 months from January, February and March, if you take a look at the USDT chart, now on the USDT chart, as I said before, altcoins can perform very well in the USD pair, but still not be perform as well as the Bitcoin chart, or the Bitcoin price, I should say. So if you take a look from February into March, ADA did 70% in the USD pair. So you think, okay, I'm profitable here, I'm making money. However, if you actually take a look at the BTC chart, those 2 months, February and March, you can see that ADA actually performed worse than Bitcoin, and you're actually losing Bitcoin value. You would have actually been better off in Bitcoin. So even though it felt like you were making a lot on ADA, going up 70% in USD price, it actually fell in BTC price because Bitcoin was performing better than ADA. So that's something to keep in mind. However, when it goes into alt season, that's when things flip and reverse, and all of a sudden, like what we saw here from December 2020 into August 2021, you remember that Bitcoin dominance chart started collapsing in January 2021 into May, and this is what happens with the altcoin pairs. The alt BTC pairs go on an absolute tear, altcoins outperform Bitcoin, and you multiply your Bitcoin. So for example, if you jumped in here from the top of January and then you managed to sell up here at August 2021, that is a 450-ish% gain on your Bitcoin. So basically 4x on whatever amount of Bitcoin you put in. Now, are we going to see the same sort of returns? Maybe not. Yeah, the Bitcoin narrative is a lot stronger this time with the ETFs and with things like runes and the amount of altcoins that there now are. It's very saturated, so we may not see the same sort of return. I mean, even on ADA last cycle, in the 2017 cycle, 2018 cycle, it tops out at 8,780 sats. In the last cycle, we only got to 6,245. So diminishing returns, maybe it only gets up to a level like 2,500 sats, something like that. But when alt season starts, you want to be in altcoins to multiply that Bitcoin. Of course, don't go all in. You always want to have a balanced portfolio. Of course, not financial advice, but yeah, don't go too crazy, but you definitely don't want to miss out on the potential opportunities that altcoins can bring in that alt season. So let's take a look at some opportunities that may be presenting themselves in the coming weeks and months. Now, one final pattern that I was going to talk about was the fact that we normally get a bounce in alt BTC pairs in November, and then they make new lows in December. Now, it did happen back in the last cycle. So if we take a look at the weekly chart and take a look at ADA, so if we zoom in here, had this bounce in November of 2020, as you can see here. Nice big bounce on what was that, the middle and third week of November, and then we made new lows in December before going on that massive tear. And if we take a look at the Bitcoin dominance and ETHBTC chart as well, so November 2020, if we can find it, there's March, August, November, here we go. So this is on the Bitcoin dominance. You can see there's a little fall in Bitcoin dominance, as it said, in that middle to third week of November. Then we got that final spike in December before alt season started. And again, with the ETHBTC, November 2020 is around here. So August, November, again, small little bounce, and the second and third week in November. Then we made new lows, and then we went on a run. So we could be seeing that playing out over the coming weeks, as I just talked about earlier in the video, with Bitcoin dominance potentially putting in one more spike, ETHBTC potentially rejecting after this bounce, rejecting this level of resistance, and the total through BTC as well, coming into a level of previous support, maybe now resistance. And now if we go through the alt BTC pairs, there is a chance that maybe we are creating a bit of a trap, a bit of a dead cat bounce before we aim lower. So ADA, for example, nice bounce so far off of the monthly range low. If we get down to the weekly, we've broken this key level of weekly resistance, as you can see, around 600 sats. You can see there's been a massive level of support and resistance all the way through, all the way back to July 2019. Now, there is potential. We put in a spike here and we come down, retest this level as support. And I think if we do, anywhere between sort of 600 and 650 sats is a really good area to get into. As I say, if we do get that November pullback that we've had in the past. If we move on to AVAX BTC, now again, if we take a look at November 2020, where is it here? In fact, AVAX didn't even have that much of a bounce. It just made new lows in December and then went on its run. But if we take a look at AVAX quickly on the monthly, you can see we've got these lows here at 3,197 sats, which remain holding on. If we take a look at the weekly time frame, we've got this big level of weekly resistance. So again, are we just bouncing into this level of resistance before we roll over and test these monthly lows? We've also got the weekly moving average 21 just above us here as well at 4,282 sats. So again, big level of weekly resistance, as you can see, all the way through its history from January 2021. So in terms of waiting for a confirmation, I would wait for a weekly candle close above this level, above the weekly moving average 21, and then I think you've got your trigger to jump into AVAX. Or if we reject this level, come down, retest the monthly level here down at 3,200 sats, that's when I would be looking to enter. In terms of NEOBTC, again, let's just quickly take a look at what happened in November 2020. So again, here's November 2020, had a bounce, hit resistance, then we came down, made new lows before we went on that run. In terms of current day, again, we've bounced off this level down here around 5,200 sats into this weekly level resistance at 6,500 sats. You can see, again, big level of resistance all the way through its history, going all the way back to 2020. Very well respected level. Are we just coming into a level of resistance here, making a lower high, before rolling over back to these lows. We've also got the weekly moving average 21 here as well. So again, if we get a weekly candle close above 6,600 sats, I would see that as probably your trigger to get in. Again, we might have a little bit of trouble with the weekly moving average 21, but I think closing above this level is a significant change of character. So I would be looking at deploying some BTC into NEO should we get the weekly candle close above there, and then adding to it once we confirm over the weekly moving average 21. If not, if this holds as resistance, then look into buy in at 5,200 sats. And then finally, Injective. Again, if we go on to quickly take a look at November 2020, not very clear on this one, but you can see that bounce at the beginning of November, then it came down, retested the lows before shooting off again. If we take a look at the monthly, big level of monthly support which held or is holding so far on the monthly time frame around 2,500 sats. You can see that very nice indeed. Onto the weekly then, and again, are we just pushing into a level of resistance before rejecting, making a lower high and going lower? This level has been a big level of previous support and resistance in the past. In fact, you can drag that all the way across the chart, and you can see that is a big level around 3,200 to 3,300 sats. And as well, you got that weekly moving average 21 just above us as well. So again, I'd be waiting for a weekly candle close above 3,400 sats. And then I think it's all systems go. And that also needs to coincide with the fact that Bitcoin dominance is starting to downtrend. ETHBTC is starting to uptrend, reclaim this level of 0.04 as support. Bitcoin dominance starting to lose 57%, and the total 3 BTC starting to close over this 48 level here. So they're all the key indicators you need to keep an eye on. Drop in the comments below what you think is happening. Has alt season started? Do you think that we're going to have another drop, another pullback in the alt BTC pairs? And what alts are you packing for the next altcoin season run?